right, welcome back to the Nexus podcast. I'm recording this live on Thursday during RSA conference. My guest is Mikko Hyppinen, one of the pioneers of cybersecurity. Mikko is the chief research officer with Secure, which is the former F-Secure for Business. Mikko's been with F-Secure since 1991. His impact on the industry has been significant for sure. Mikko's done a lot of work on an analysis on some of the earliest viruses and worms all the way to today, providing his expertise into current malware and cybercrime activity. We're going to talk about ransomware today and the first decade of this threat, which was the theme of Mikko's keynote this week here at at RSA. So, how you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, it's.
Can we tell it's the last day of RSA?
Yeah, I know. But it's great to be in RSA. You meet so many people, and I've actually heard a lot of talks this week as well. So that's great.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get buried in meetings and conversations. You forget that there's actual information being exchanged here this week.
Yes.
I mean, before we jump into the ransomware topic, obviously you've been in this industry practically since its infancy. I mean. Ever step back and look at what goes on today and just like, wow, how did we get here?
Yep. I was thinking about exactly that yesterday as I was walking through the expo, and the expo just doesn't end. It goes on, and these massive booths for huge companies, and then 1,000 companies you've never heard of. And I was wondering about when did this all happen? Like this is a huge industry nowadays. And in 1991, when I was doing reverse engineering for the first time in my life, there was no industry. There was nothing, right. And so it's all grown over these couple of decades, and it's quite amazing. So we've built something.
Right. It is wild, and like the influx of startups never seems to end. Like you said, that show floor goes on forever. There's 2 rooms and endless companies and endless tables.
Unfortunately, it also means that there continues to be a problem to solve. I mean, we wouldn't be here without bad people. We wouldn't be here without online crime. So, Internet is a reflection of the real world,
right.
and just like we have real world has crime, online world has crime, and I don't think that's going to change, not until we run out of bad people.
Yeah. What are some of the milestones you look back on over the last, 25, 30 years? And
I think the biggest change has been the change in the enemy, because I still remember fighting teenage kids who were writing viruses for fun,
sure,
for kicks, for no real reason, they wanted to destroy things or show messages, play games with the victims, things like that, which meant they got no recognition, they got no fame, they made no money, and that's so different from today.
Right.
The time of these happy hackers, it's completely behind us, and I think the biggest shift happened in 2003, because in 2003 we found the first money-making malware, first worm which is really going around in larger numbers for the sole purpose of creating a botnet which was used to send spam, and spam makes money. So that's when money-making started, so 21 years ago.
Sure.
And at the same time, in the same year, we analyzed in our labs the very first governmental malware case we ever had, which was
that far back.
Yep, 2003. The Chinese malware, which we later attributed to PLA, which was hitting defense contractors in Europe. So that's when the change really happened, from the old school time of hobbyists to this world where we live today, where everything is coming from organized online cybercrime gangs or from nation states.
Was that sample you mentioned, was that espionage related, or?
Yep, It was hitting one particular defense contractor in Europe, which was building fighter jets, stealing fighter jets' plans and sending them back to mainland China.
Yeah.
We later attributed several related malware cases to the same source, which we later figured out was People's Liberation Army of China.
Yeah. I mean, it's great that you mentioned the botnets and just that propagation of spam, because it became phishing.
Yep, absolutely, yes. And of course, then we started seeing credit card theft and banking Trojans, and then 10 years ago, ransomware. Well, ransomware with the Bitcoin angle, that's a different thing to keep in mind here. We had seen things like police Trojans or the Reveton family, which were locking people's computers, asking them to pay to unlock the computer, and they were claiming to be the police.
Right.
Your system is locked. But the payment mechanism in those early attempts was virtual credit cards or prepaid cards, which was really hard for the criminals. It was really easy to track where the money went. And then in 2013, we found CryptoLocker. And CryptoLocker was the first Bitcoin-enabled ransomware. Bitcoin was invented in 2009. So 4 years later, first ransomware using Bitcoin was found. And the interesting link between the old world and new world is that very first CryptoLocker distribution hitting home users was through the Zeus botnet. Remember Zeus, banking Trojan botnets, hundreds of thousands of infected computers around the world, which it was making all its money with like stealing money from people's online bank accounts. And the very same botnet built by Russian Yevgeny Bogachev, was used to distribute the very first Bitcoin-enabled ransomware. This was 2013. Right. And it's almost impossible to remember anymore how different the ransomware problem was back then. All of the early Bitcoin-enabled ransomware cases, like CryptoLocker, CryptoWall, Locky, CTP Locker, they were all targeting home users. This was a consumer problem.
Right.
None of those were hitting companies. None of those were targeting enterprises. Right. So the thing they were really encrypting were your photos. Your holiday pictures got encrypted, and the ransom amounts they were asking for were $200, $300.
Right.
Quite different.
Yeah, I remember writing about some of those early infections, and they're like the ransom note was, you downloaded illicit images or you visited some website you shouldn't have, and like you said, it was pretending to be some kind of law enforcement.
Yep. We saw a lot of that. And we also saw Trojans which were claiming to be like international copyright agencies, and they would actually even list video or audio torrent files you would have on your hard drive. We found these files on your hard drive, and now you have to pay a copyright fee. So they were trying to fool the users, but the basic idea was the same as we still see today. But very quickly, the more clever actors realized that while it's much harder to infect corporate networks than home computers, there's much more money you can make if you're able to hit corporate networks. And that's when the corporate ransomware problem started, and that's been now the major problem for a full decade.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember some of those early samples, like in terms of the messaging or the encryption behind it?
Sure. One of my favorite ones of the early ransomware cases was the Popcorn Trojan, which had a really clever payment mechanism because it offered the victim two different ways of paying the ransom. You could either pay the ransom in Bitcoin, or if you can't pay it, it gives you a unique URL, a unique address, which will infect anyone who visits the address. And if you spread the URL, for example, post it on Twitter, and you infect two more victims who pay the ransom, then your files will be unlocked for free. So this is like a combination of a ransomware with a chain letter or something like
devious.
that. It's also pretty clever. You have to give them some credit here. But of course, in corporate environment, the big shift, the big benefit that corporate networks got from this corporate ransomware problem was that backup processes got improved heavily. Companies realized that it's not enough to have backups once a month. It's not enough to have backups of some of your stuff. You have to have everything backed up. You have to have it in real time, and you have to be able to restore the data in real time. This lesson was learned the hard way in many companies which did have backups in place, but then when they were hit with ransomware, they realized that restoring the backups wasn't practical. In some cases, it might have taken weeks to just restore everything. So they ended up paying the ransom just to get their own files back faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It exposed a lot of weaknesses in terms of basic hygiene, in either initial foothold or kind of missing backups, et cetera. Stuff that hopefully is kind of security 101 these days.
That's right. And then we also saw a very clear shift in the branding that these online crime gangs do. When we think about the biggest ransomware gangs today, Lockbit, Alpha, Clop, Akira, Royal, Black Pasta, Play, Quantum. We know these by name. If you work in the industry, you know of these gangs. They've been around for years. They have a reputation. They have names. They have logos. They do branding. People even take tattoos of these gangs' logos, which is a bit surprising. That why would a crime gang build a brand? But then when you think about real-world organized crime, they brand as well. One
Sure.
of the strongest brands in the world is Hell's Angels. Think about, Yakuza or Cosa Nostra or MS-13 or Bandidos. These are brands, and they build these brands on purpose. They build a strong and scary brand. Like, you don't fool around with the Hells Angels. It's the Hells Angels.
Sure.
And that's exactly what Lockbit and Akira and Alpha and Klopp are trying to do. Imagine going to the office Monday morning only to realize that, oh my God, we've been hit by ransomware. And then, oh my God, it's Lockbit. Oh my God, it's Akira. Oh my God, it's Play. Because we know these gangs by reputation. We know it's serious. We know these guys know what they're doing. We know they've been in the business for years. We know that the encryption systems they use are strong. But we also know that if we play ball, if we pay the ransom, we know that they will deliver, because they've done it over and over again for years and years. They've built a reputation that they're criminals, but that they are honest criminals. If they wouldn't deliver, pretty quickly nobody would pay.
See, that's always been, that's always been fascinating to me, is that there has to be, I hate to apply the word integrity to it, but if you don't deliver on your promise, you're quickly not going to continue to make money from these schemes, correct?
That's right. And in fact, I believe that the biggest hit to the reputation that these online crime gangs were building were the two largest malware outbreaks of 2017, which we all remember, WannaCry and NotPetya.
Sure.
Now, WannaCry and NotPetya are the two largest ransomware cases in history, but they were both complete outliers. WannaCry was not written by a crime gang, it was written by North Korean government. NotPetya was written by the Russian government. NotPetya looked like ransomware, but it wasn't ransomware at all. It was actually a cyber weapon which was just trying to masquerade as a ransomware. It was a cover story. And most importantly, in both cases, paying didn't help. With WannaCry, paying didn't work because they had no Onion or Tor site or chat system. They just had an email address, which was shut down by the operator immediately. So even if you paid the ransom, you couldn't tell the criminals that, I've paid, please unlock my files. So NotPetya and WannaCry destroyed big part of the good reputation these crime gangs had been trying to build for themselves for many years, and they're still somewhat recovering from that. But these, by and large today, if you pay the ransom, they actually do try to work with you. There are the occasional failures, and of course one failure which is huge in size is the United Health Group case here in the United States. There was the hearing about it just a couple of weeks ago, and this is massive in size. Huge part of American citizens had their medical data lost in the breach, and United Health estimates that the losses will be around the range of $2 billion. But even more importantly, they paid the ransom. They paid $22 million to Alpha, the gang behind it, and they still didn't get their files back. They still didn't prevent the leak because one of the Alpha leaders did an exit scam. He took the money and run. And the actual attacker was one of the affiliates for Alpha. He didn't get paid, so he continued ransoming the original victim. So sometimes this happens. You don't always get your files back. You don't always prevent the leak, even if you pay the ransom.
And sometimes, like in their case, you get reinfected.
Oh yeah, that happens as well. So of course we never recommend anyone to pay the ransom.
No.
This problem would solve itself if everybody would stop paying the ransom, but that's much easier to say than do.
Of course. It's a business decision at the end of the day when it's not. I know law enforcement, I know security experts like don't pay, but when the executives get involved and we're seeing X amount of downtime, X amount of dollars lost, it's a difficult business decision.
Funnily enough, I know two cases where law enforcement agencies themselves were hit with ransomware where the cops paid the criminals. So cops pay money to criminals to get their own files back.
Right. Talk to me about the emergence of ransomware as a service, because I think that this is another kind of milestone in this whole phenomenon around ransomware.
That's right. That's 2018. So GandGrab, which later became REvil, they pioneered ransomware as a service, and the whole idea that they built a platform. They built the actual malware which does the encryption part. They built the backend services. They built the Onion site. They built the chat system, and they built the payment mechanisms. And then they just let anybody use it. You can sign up as an affiliate and just take the malware and infect random places. And if everything is successful and the victim pays the ransom, the affiliate gets a major cut of the actual ransom payment. This became the dominant way of making money, and it really changed the way how newcomers could easily enter the field of making money with ransomware. It also was the way in for initial access brokers.
Okay.
Today, very big part of the way in to company networks is through remote vulnerabilities. Early on, it was using existing botnets, then email and malicious attachments, then credentials. We still see credential theft and credential stuffing as a way in, but the number one way is weaknesses in internet-facing systems, typically remote access services, VPNs, firewalls, RDP servers, file access tools, things like that.
Yeah.
So these initial access brokers are sort of working on the perimeter of these ransomware gangs. They have vulnerabilities. They scan the whole internet or the whole IPv4 address space. They find vulnerable machines. They test that they can get in, but they don't do any damage. They don't break in. They don't install ransomware. They just sell access to others. And the reason why they work like this is that they believe that they're not going to be facing law enforcement action because they didn't install any ransomware.
Right.
They didn't actually do it. They were just trying all the doors, finding which ones are open, and then selling the information which of the doors are open to someone else who then actually does the break-in.
I can see why the bad guys are always one step ahead of the good guys, unfortunately. They're just
but
no
then
rules.
again, the good news about the whole ransomware landscape is that we've seen more indictments and more uncovering of online criminals over the last 2 years than ever before. It really started from the Colonial Pipeline and JBS Foods incidents here in the United States. That's the case that really woke up the leaders at the highest level, including President Biden,
Sure.
who then had a meeting with President Putin and said very clearly that, this is not okay. Responsible countries don't harbor criminals who run ransomware operations on their soil, was the exact sentence he said. And after that, State Department here in the United States started issuing these bounties, typically $10 million bounty for information leading to arrests of leaders of the largest gangs. What they don't say publicly, but what seems to be the case, is that if you rat your friends, you don't just get 10 million, you also get immunity from prosecution. And then this quickly becomes a case of game theory. Like, think about it. You're in a crime gang. You've been doing crime for a couple of years. You see the news. $10 million bounty if I rat all my friends, which means all my friends will go to jail, but I won't. I'm going to get immunity and I'm going to get $10 million. Then you realize that all your friends are reading the news as well. So now you realize I have to move before any of my friends move.
Who's going to be the first rat?
Exactly. First to move gets everything, everyone else loses everything.
Right.
And that's a great tactic of breaking these groups from within. And that led to the series of largest arrests we've seen for ransomware gang members and affiliates over the last 2 years. Surprisingly, almost surprisingly, even Russian law enforcement was participating pretty actively with the information they were receiving from the West. Unfortunately, a big part of the cooperation ended in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, and the likelihood or the interest for cooperation sort of went away. But nevertheless, we're still seeing indictments. Just during RSA conference, we saw the uncovering of the leader of the Lockbit gang, and that's really great news.
Yeah.
He's in Russia. It's unlikely that he's going to be, he will not be extradited. Mr. Dmitry Koroshev will stay in Russia, but he has plenty of enemies inside Russia because he's been burning leaders of other crime gangs while he's been growing Lockbit. So we don't know what's going to happen with him, but his future probably isn't too rosy.
Right. That's a good point, because I was going to ask you, sure, there have been actions against some of these gangs and uncovering names and so forth, but they're nameless. They're just names. They're faceless people. But I mean, is there an impact? And I guess that there is.
Well,
by doing so.
Yeah. I mean, if you're burned, if you're doxxed to the level that, for example, Mr. Koroshev was doxxed during this week, he's not safe in Russia either. He might not be arrested by Russian law enforcement, but he has enemies. So he will be on the run for the rest of his life, and he won't be able to leave Russia for the rest of his life.
Right. It's kind of trapped.
Yeah.
What about this mutation evolution in terms of adding extortion to these ransomware campaigns by stealing data and holding the stolen data over the victim's head, whether it's patient data or intellectual property, the threat of leaking it.
Sure. This technique, known also as double extortion
Yes.
or leak sites. This was pioneered by Maze, also one of the largest gangs, also a Russian gang. This was 2019, so 5 years now we've been fighting leak sites. And this was a direct response to the improved backup processes of companies. Like over the first 5 years of corporate ransomware, companies learn that we have to have good backups. We have to be able to restore them quickly, which means we don't have to pay the ransom. So of course, then the next step is that these gangs start stealing the information and they will leak it if you don't pay. And that's really tough. That's a really tough call for companies. Like, should we pay the ransom to prevent us from losing all of our confidential information, or should we not? And I've worked with many companies who were in the middle of this decision. I can tell you, practically always, first on, in the beginning of the incident, all the leadership team members and board members agreed that we're not going to pay the ransom. Like, it's only going to make the problem worse. We have to be responsible, and we won't pay this. We're ready to take the hit. We're ready to have our patent applications leaked online. Then they realize just the extent of the information that would be made available, including, for example, let's say emails of your emails of your employees exchanging a communication with the corporate healthcare about private health issues.
Right.
That would be public as well, which would of course mean unending string of lawsuits from your employees for leaking their health information. So they realize that some cases they just have to pay the ransom, and that is the problem. As long as companies pay, this problem will grow. Now, our statistics show that less and less companies pay the ransom. However, the overall income of these gangs is growing and growing, and that means they're attacking more and more targets. So companies are wising up, and I'm glad we are seeing less companies paying, less companies willing to take the hits. That we didn't do our homework, we got hit, we lost the data, now we just have to suffer the consequences. But the criminals want to make the same money they've been making, or more money they've been making. So what's the solution? Find more victims, hit more targets. It's getting worse.
Yeah.
So my forecast now, after the first decade of corporate ransomware, is that the next decade is going to get worse. And I think we've only seen the very beginning of this problem, unfortunately.
Yeah. That kind of leads into my next question. I mean, there don't seem to be any red lines for these threat actors. I mean, how many hospitals got hit during COVID? Sure. Just disrupting patient care, putting lives at risk, and it just didn't seem to be a red line.
Yeah, well, there were some gangs which were unwilling to hit medical institutions or hospitals during the pandemic, but for others they did exactly the opposite. They went after these targets knowing that they were critical and they would be likely to pay the ransom immediately. During the pandemic, I also worked myself extensively with one incident which actually goes down to history books of my home country Finland as the largest crime in our history. Finland is a small country. We have 5.5 million people. This one ransom incident hitting a private psychotherapy center in Finland had 32,000 victims, which is a sizable part of our citizens. They lost their private psychotherapy notes, which is pretty much the most explosive thing that you could have. Not just problematic for yourself, but everybody around you. Because when you go to a psychotherapist, you speak freely about yourself, your spouses, your family, your bosses, your children. All of that was taken by the attacker, who was ransoming or blackmailing first the therapy center and then the individual patients. Pay me $500 or I will leak your psychotherapy notes. And unfortunately, the whole case ended with every single note being leaked in the Tor network. 32,000 people suffered and are still suffering today. The good news is that we actually found the criminal, and he was sentenced just last week before the RSA conference. He got 6 years, 3 months in prison, which by the Finnish legal system is a tough sentence. Internationally, it doesn't sound like a very tough sentence at all.
How would you characterize the targeting in terms of opportunistic attacks versus targeted? Are you seeing more on the targeted side? And I'm thinking, looking for potential victims that may be willing to pay versus, spraying out and seeing what comes back,
I talked to a lot of companies of all sizes, and I've yet to meet a company or a public sector organization which would sort of assume that we're going to be the next victim. Everybody assumes the opposite. Like, why would they hit us? Like, especially if you're not very well known or public or a big company, the CISOs and CIOs think that, they're not going to hit us. They're not going to find us. Why would they hit us? And what I always do, during these discussions is that I take out my iPad, I open up my Tor browser, we go to the Onion network, I open up the website for one of the bigger gangs.
Sure.
And I just show them victims. Take a look at these victims. Especially Lockbit is a great example because they have 7,000 victims. So you can just keep scrolling forever. More and more and more companies, public sector entities from all over the world, of all sizes. Small companies, large companies, mid-sized, with all possible business areas. So right next to each other you have a furniture manufacturer from Copenhagen, then you have a steel mill from Vancouver, then you have a bank from Sao Paulo.
Right.
So it really opens up the eyes that if these companies were hit, if it's this random, nothing really protects me. So the vast majority of the attacks are just spray and pray. They scan IP ranges to find machines with vulnerabilities, or the initial access brokers do that, and then they go in. So it doesn't really matter who you are and where you are. There are the exceptions. Sometimes they go after specific industries or hoping that some specific business areas would pay the ransom easier. But and for example, we've seen cases where insurance agencies were hit and clients of cyber insurances, list of those were stolen and targeted because they have cyber insurance, so maybe they will pay easier because they have insurance. But those are the exceptions. The norm is that they go after whoever has the weakness in their system.
Mm-hmm. What should we be doing about the cryptocurrency part of this equation in terms of the payments, the ransom payments that are made? I mean, obviously for the attacker, there's a measure of anonymity with some of these currencies, but just it seems too easy of a channel for them to exploit and use so effectively.
We have two types of currencies in this world. We have currencies based on politics and currencies based on math.
Right.
Currencies based on politics like dollar and euro, and currencies based on math, which is all the cryptocurrencies. If your currency is based on politics, you can regulate it. You can pass laws.
Right.
You can make things illegal. You can't do this with this kind of money. You can't really regulate or pass laws on currencies based on math because math doesn't care about your laws. The only thing you can regulate are the exchanges, basically the points where you switch real-world currencies to online currencies. And most of these crime gangs prefer to keep their wealth in blockchain. They don't move it to the real world at all because it's safe as long as it's in blockchain.
Sure.
That's also one of the reasons why many of these gangs have become so wealthy, because they've had tens of thousands of bitcoins for years and years. So they've just grown in valuation automatically, which is also a problem because now they can invest more into their attacks.
Right.
But the regulation part is hard because math doesn't care about your regulation. Now, this week, during the Korosev indictment, U.S. government also sanctioned Lockbit. So it's now an entity under sanctions, which means you cannot pay ransoms to Lockbit. If you do, you are breaking sanctions, and you don't want to break sanctions. You will lose access to banks if you break sanctions. So they're effectively banning payments to one group. Mm-hmm. And there's been discussion about banning payments altogether, making it illegal in a specific country to pay ransom at all. And I'm not sure if I'm a fan. It seems like an easy, obvious solution. If it's illegal, the problem will go away. But think about this from another point of view. Imagine if you pass a law that if your family member is kidnapped, it's illegal to pay the ransom to free your family member. I think most of us wouldn't feel very good about that.
Right.
Clearly, it's a good idea in general, but if it happens to us, if your child is kidnapped, you definitely prefer to pay the ransom to get your child back, as opposed not paying it and losing your child. So, again, it's easy to say. It's much harder to do in practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, the victims are in an absolute no-win situation, and are going to make the best decision for them.
Yes,
possible.
Unfortunately, that is the case.
Yeah. I mean, do you have kind of an overarching opinion on paying ransom or advice you give organizations?
It's very simple. I always tell, don't pay the ransom. It's going to make the problem worse for everybody. But of course, some of these entities that I've given this advice haven't followed my advice, and they have paid the
Sure.
ransom. And I understand it.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it, but I understand it.
Yeah.
There's also one bit of breaking news which I want to mention here, which is that Akira, which is now the third largest ransomware gang, their encryption algorithm was broken last week by a researcher that I know, a completely unrelated company.
Yeah.
But I just want to get the word out to victims of Akira. There's help available for cracking or getting your files back without paying,
Mhm.
and that's of course great.
Yeah, I mean that's true. There are a lot of places that host decryptors and so
Yeah.
forth. I mean, there are publicly available
Yeah,
answers.
and for example,
sometimes.
Akira was thought to be unbreakable. It wasn't, so
Right.
it was cracked just recently.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I know we probably touched on a lot of things you talked about this week during your presentation, but just kind of take me inside your talk. Just maybe some things we didn't touch on. That
Well, I spoke a little bit about the future. We've seen the last decade. I also already said that the next decade is probably going to be worse. One thing which will make it worse is, of course, the buzzword, which is artificial intelligence. And maybe not even AI in itself, just automation. Automating the operations. And this is interesting because that's what security companies have been doing for very long time. We started building our automation systems in 2005 at WithSecure. So for 20 years we've been automating our work. So instead of humans making the decisions and blocking specific malware or domain or
Right.
email, it's machines doing it. Clearly the enemy, the attackers, could do the same, and they aren't doing it today. We know they aren't because they are slow. The reaction times we see from attackers to our defenses, they rank in hours or days. They could automate reaction, so they see that defenders are blocking an IP range, so they get a new IP range. Blocking a domain, they register a new domain. Blocking a binary, recompile the binary. Blocking an email, rewrite the email. You could automate all of this, and with help of large language models, you could automate even the email part or
Sure.
domain parts, all of that. That's going to happen. It's going to happen in the near future, and when it happens, then we will have good AI against bad AI.
Bad AI, yeah.
And then we'll see which one will really win.
Right. Yeah. I hate it that it's becoming a buzzword, because when you hear about practical applications of AI like this, it definitely puts a different face on it.
Yeah. It's very. AI altogether is exciting and scary, just
Yeah.
the way we like it.
Perfect. All right, that's a good place to leave it.
All right.
So great to see you. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
doing
Mike. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
this. Same to you. Bye-bye.